to discuss the pros and cons of letting your property out to the council. To a new landlord particularly, the idea of having your property let out for a guaranteed rent, for a guaranteed period of time, can look very attractive. Very often councils will offer a reasonable rent, and particularly in the downturn economy, having no vacant periods in your property can seem like a miracle. But don't get too excited yet. Here are some of the issues you need to examine. Firstly, some councils pay the rent directly to the tenant, and then the tenant's supposed to pay you. However, I've often seen tenants spend all the rent money and then they've no money to pay you, the landlord. Evictions are difficult enough when you have to initiate them, but when you have someone else do it for you and you're not allowed to be part of that process, it feels like an exercise in futility. When a tenant fails to pay your rent, you as the landlord have to show proof that the tenant didn't pay. The council doesn't have to show it, the tenant doesn't have to show it, but you have to show that proof. Then you have to wait for the council to initiate the eviction process. And once again, you have no control over any of this. So what started out looking like the answer to your prayers may well end up being your biggest nightmare. Now we get to the terms and conditions of council rentals. The council reserve the right to rent your property to people who seek asylum, single mothers, the homeless, people on benefits, the indigent and the disadvantaged. Then you say to yourself, well, that's okay as long as the council abides by its rules that it will return the premises to the way they were at the beginning of the rental. On the surface, that probably sounds acceptable. We've already seen how long it takes to evict a tenant, during which time you've received no rental. Now let's look at another aspect. You may need to sell your property quickly because you need the money. This is where the difficulty comes in. The council will tell you that first they have to find another place that's available for your tenants. Whereas the economy greatly influences the buying and selling of property, so that you have a buyer's market and a seller's market, when you're dealing with the council, it's the exact opposite. There is always a shortage of council housing. And what this translates into is that you no longer have autonomy over your own property, because it could take a year, 2 years, 5 years before the council will find another suitable property to move your tenants into. I had a client who came to me in tears about a property that she'd rented to the council about a year ago. The first 12 months everything ran smoothly. Then the funding was cut to the council and the council had to move the tenants out. The original agreement was that the premises would be restored to its original condition. This never happened. The place was destroyed by the tenants. My client had to spend thousands of pounds restoring her property. So to summarise, the council in any country is a government undertaking. It's very difficult to sue the government or to get them to change their laws. So if after hearing this you still decide to rent your property to the council, make sure that you have a lot of money for unexpected repairs and you have a lot of patience to wait it out. I had an email from John S. from last week's show. He says, I think you have a heartless approach to being a landlord. I am about to invest in my first property and will gladly welcome tenants who have pets. I myself have 3 dogs and 2 cats, and I would be severely upset if I tried to find a house to rent and I was denied a lease because I had pets. Well, thank you for your email. There are some landlords who do allow tenants to have pets, but they are in the minority. The reason for this is because no matter how careful you try to be with the cleanliness of your animals, they do leave a very pungent smell. If you leave your cat litter box in a well-ventilated garage, the smell might not bother you. But if you live in an apartment and you have a litter box, you cannot escape the smell. Now, if you're a landlord and your tenant is getting ready to move and the apartment is very clean, but that smell lingers on, you're going to have to do something. Maybe hire commercial cleaners to make it ready for the next tenant who may not care for animals or who may have allergies to them. So I will throw this question back to you. If you lease your apartment to a cat lover and they leave and people come to view the apartment but cannot stand the odour and you lose prospective tenants, will you still feel the same way? Next week, we'll talk about tenants and their issues with landlords. See you next week.